Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the June 27, 2012 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education Legislative Meeting. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to ask everyone to please turn off all cell phones and pagers or put them on vibrate. Would everyone please rise so we can salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As is our tradition and procedure before the legislative meeting, we like to recognize students and employees of the Pittsburgh Public School District. I'd like to ask board members to please come forward, and I will turn this portion of the meeting over to Miss Ebony Pugh.
Thank you, Ms. Hazuda. We have one Distinguished Achievement Award this evening to recognize 3 Pittsburgh Obama students for their achievement at the 2012 Pennsylvania YMCA Youth in Government Model Convention. Youth in Government is a club run by the YMCA and exists at the state and now national level. There are over 40 clubs with 400 students that participate throughout Pennsylvania. Students prepare all year with their local clubs for a 3-day model legislative session in our state's Capitol building. The administration of the state government is elected during the model session. Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Speaker of the House, Chief Justice, and Editor-in-Chief of the Press Corps. Pittsburgh Obama had an unprecedented showing at this year's model session with 3 students being elected this year. Eric Rodriguez as Youth Governor, Ben Junker as Lieutenant Governor, and Anna Vitti, Editor-in-Chief, were all elected to run next year's administration. In addition, Ben Junker was awarded Outstanding Senate Committee Chair, and Anna Vitti was awarded Outstanding Press Corps Member. Anna could not be here this evening, but we wanted to share an interesting fact about her. She is the daughter of Peter Vitti, social studies teacher at Pittsburgh Obama and the school's Youth in Government sponsor. Eric and Ben will join 700 students from across the country at next week's Congress of National Affairs Conference in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Let's congratulate these students on this great achievement. Ben is here with his parents. And this concludes our Distinguished Achievement Awards for this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Pugh. Before we call a roll call, I'd like to ask Mrs. Fink to share some very special comments. Mrs. Fink?
Okay. Our solicitor, Ira Weiss, was recently selected to receive the Distinguished Achievement in Law Award for 2012. The Distinguished Achievement Award was presented last Thursday, June 21st, at the Dr. Samuel Francis School Law Symposium and Special Education Workshop hosted by Tri-State Area School Study Council in conjunction with the University of Pittsburgh's Law School and School of Education. Mr. Weiss was presented with a commemorative plaque at a recognition event. I would like to take a moment to read the inscription on the plaque, which honors his lifetime achievement. A man whose competency, commitment, and advocacy on behalf of public education are exceeded by none and matched by few. His legal efforts over nearly 40 years of service, personified by relentless effort, self-sacrifice, and no equivocation, have corrected innumerable injustices and established significant legal precedents. His legacy will be long-lasting admiration, respect, and gratitude from all those that he served.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink, and congratulations, Mr. Weiss.
Thank you. My mother did not write that plaque. I just want you to know that. Thank you to Mrs. Fink. Thank you to the board, and thank you to Tri-State. I've always considered representing school districts and public entities a privilege, and it's a privilege to represent and be associated with the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and congratulations again. On a more somber note, I'd like to ask Dr. Hawley to say a few words.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. At this time, on behalf of the board and the school district, I would like to give some words on Sylvester Pace, his memorial. We would like to take this time to remember a longtime advocate for education who we recently lost to a long-term illness. Mr. Sylvester Pace dedicated his life to education and his community. At the time of his death, he was working on his doctorate, and when he wasn't studying, he helped others pursue their own education. For years, he organized a 10-state bus tour to historically Black colleges. Mr. Pace believed education was the key to unlocking a successful future. After he received a scholarship from NEED, the Negro Educational Emergency Drive, he attended Cheyney University and graduated with a degree in sociology. At the time, he didn't know he would repay NEED by becoming its president and CEO in later years. Before doing so, he worked for Presley Ridge School for Troubled Youth, Abraxas Youth and Family Services, and a pharmaceutical sales company. His work caught the attention of NEED, who later recruited him as an executive director before promoting him to head up the organization. In a way, Mr. Pace became our Pittsburgh Promise before that scholarship fund was established. Over NEED's 49-year history, 19,000 students received money for college, including Regina Hawley. Some, like Mr. Pace, wouldn't have attended otherwise because they couldn't afford to pay for it. Under his leadership, NEED managed an annual $2 million in funds in scholarships, grants, financial assistance, mentoring, internships, and counseling. Mr. Pace's contribution will leave behind a great legacy for generations to come. Mr. Pace is survived by his wife and his lovely 2 daughters, who were also Pittsburgh Public School students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please? Okay, Mr. Brennan.
I just want to send out my condolences to the family. I was able to attend one of the services on behalf of Mr. Pace. And I just want to just say to the family that, you know, they always ask, you know, that what did you do when you were here in your life? How many lives have you touched? And the family should be able to rest assured that Sylvester exceeded his level. He worked very, very hard all the time. Three of my children were able to go on the Black College tour with his help. The most important thing that I remember is his interaction with students during the college tour, and probably the everlasting thing that I'll have on Mr. Pace is the clean white beard and his smile. You never caught him without the smile, and he had the ability to speak the language with a lot of the students. So my kids were very, very hurt when they heard about it, and so I just wanted to say to the family, thank you for allowing us to experience Mr. Pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bentley,
Here.
Mrs. Khaleesi,
Here.
Mrs. Fink,
Here.
Dr. Hawley,
Here.
Mr. Eisler,
Present.
Mr. McCray,
Here.
Ms. Shealy,
Here.
Mr. Sumter,
Present.
Mrs. Azuda.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Sumter to please share our core beliefs and commitments.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. The Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to maximizing the academic achievement of all students within the district. The Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to providing a safe and orderly learning environment for all students, staff within the district. The Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to distributing resources in an equitable manner to meet the needs of all students to the maximum extent feasible. Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to supporting effectively and efficiently the operations of the district. And last but not least, the Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to improving community engagement, parent engagement within the Pittsburgh public school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Will everyone please turn to the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? I'd like to have a motion. Wait a minute. Okay. Wait a minute. Khaleesi moved. Who's seconding? Somebody seconded. Okay, McCray seconded. All right. Mr. Sumter, question on it.
The vote on the Committee of Education says that the report was approved by an 8-0 vote. Item 8, pages 4 and 5, was approved by a 5-3 vote. I would like to know what item 8 was from that vote of last month. The minutes, front page.
Mr. Sumter, I had a hard time hearing you. Could you repeat your question a little bit louder, please?
The question was where it says that item 8, pages 4 and 5, was approved by a vote of 5-3-0. I would like to know what item 8 was. And perhaps in the future, if could be a little more explanation as to those items instead of just by number. Without having the report in front of me, it's hard to remember which item that was.
Okay, they're going to go get it, so we'll have that.
You can go with the report on education, go ahead with that.
Okay, Mr. Brentley, you had a
Or does
question.
he have it?
Mr. Camarda handed me sheet item 8 is the Success Schools item, Mr. Sumter.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Brentley, your question?
Yes, I'm not sure where to fit it in, but I wanted to clarify. Last month, I shared some information, I think, actually about Success Schools and its relationships to the CAMS program and CEP and so on. And I want to include, if it's possible for the record, some information was shared with me by one of the viewers concerning a brochure that was produced by the Success Schools, and they list Clayton Academy as one of their clients and one of their programs. And so I just think, for our sake, we need to be very, very clear as to relationships as we give contracts. And so I'd like to submit that for the record, if that's a possibility, or at least make this available somehow. This is just a copy of a brochure that shows the programs and the outcomes, and then it lists a variety of different programs. And so even for me, I think it's important that we really find a way to clarify where where this program is and how it stands. So, but for now, it is a part of, or at least that's what's listed in the literature, and I want to just include that in the record if that's a possibility. I don't know legally if I can in terms of definition.
He's asking, is that legal?
That's
Just for the
fine,
record.
and I will certainly review that and take whatever steps are necessary to get that clarification. If it's at variance with what our understanding is and our representations made to us, we'll certainly review it and report back to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Sumter.
I just want to thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I just want to take this opportunity to clarify why I asked that question. The Hill District Education Council had contacted some board members and asked that the vote from last month be rescinded. And I asked for clarity as to what that item was, to only point out that if it were to be rescinded, it would have to be somebody from the majority side to bring it up for rescission. That's all.
Mrs. Khaleesi.
With all due respect, and I don't mean to, did we change the process of this meeting at some point that I missed? Because we went right into Mrs. Fink's comments, then Dr. Howard's, and then this. Did I miss something in the way we changed the meeting? Because usually this comes under new business or...
Yeah, go ahead.
Mrs. Khaleesi, my understanding is that it's appropriate now because Mr. Sumter's questions were around the validity of the minutes.
I got Mr. Sumter's part, but I guess I got confused when those...
They were exceptional things, and we actually had a discussion after you had left the meeting, after you had gone outside earlier, where was it appropriate to have them read the two things.
Okay.
And we didn't want them to get kind of lost in the shuffle of business after business that takes action. Thank you for questioning it, because this is a little bit of, it's an unusual start. Right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion by Khaleesi and McCray on the minutes from the, let me look at the date. It's been so long. May 23rd, the May 23rd, 2012 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Okay, minutes are approved. At this time, I'd like to read the executive session statement. In addition to executive sessions announced at the legislative meeting of May 23rd, 2012, the board met in executive sessions on June 20th, 2012, and immediately before this legislative meeting to discuss various personnel matters that may include, but are not limited to, administrative vacancies and positions opened and closed. Finally, at the executive session immediately before this legislative meeting, the board discussed student discipline cases that involved violations of various portions of the Code of Student Conduct. The board does not vote at executive sessions. We'll now turn to the Committee on Education. And before we begin discussing the, you know what, I need my numbers. Thank you. If you would please turn to page 21 of the report, I'd like to give you the student suspension, transfer, and expulsion numbers for this month. 67 students suspended for 4 to 10 days. No students suspended for 4 to 10 days and transferred to another Pittsburgh public school. 4 students expelled out of school for 11 days or more. And no students expelled out of school for 11 days or more and transferred to another Pittsburgh public schools. We'll be following our new procedure this evening that was introduced in April. Before voting on the education and business report, board's members will be discussing each of the items that were pulled at agenda review and any additional agenda items that are requested to be pulled for discussion this evening. Our discussion will be centered on one issue at a time. My hope is that we will have improved communication on the major items before us. After discussion is complete, board members will take a roll call vote on the entire report. Agenda items number 10, 13, 16, 17, 46, and 47 were pulled for further discussion at agenda review. Are there any additional items that anyone would like pulled out of the Education Committee report for further discussion at this time? Anyone? All right, we'll begin with item number 10 then. It's Waterfront Learning, a service of the AIU3 that was pulled at the agenda review. Anyone have any? I'm not going to go in order, so just catch my eye. Mrs. Khaleesi.
Okay, on item 10, this is the cyber school, am I correct?
Yes.
Are we going to be...
Online school.
Online school, thank you. Are we going to have any type of advertising plans or anything of that sort with this in mind?
The plan is that we will be doing some targeted outreach. We're not doing general advertising because our goal really is to reach out to students that are currently Pittsburgh Public School students attending an online school. And so that's a targeted outreach plan, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
And if anyone wanted to, and I know we touched on this very lightly, but I don't recall what the end result was. If someone outside of the district wanted to use our online school, is that permissible?
Yes, we would have to have some kind of arrangement around tuition, that kind of thing for it, but we would figure out a plan if we had a student that wanted to participate in our online school.
So there's no limit to it because of any code or law or anything of that sort?
I'd refer to Mr. Weiss on that issue. I don't believe there is.
Thank you, Dr. Lane.
A student who is not a resident of the school district of Pittsburgh who would want to attend the school district's online school or participate in the online school, enroll in the online school, would have to pay tuition. The sending district, that is the district in which the student resides, would have no obligation to pay that. It's based upon the district's per pupil cost, which we need not get into tonight in detail, but a non-resident student who wants to attend a Pittsburgh public school must pay tuition at our per pupil cost as established in the school code.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Clay. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. One of the primary purposes for pulling this, in my suggestion, was that it goes right in line with Mrs. Khaleesi's concern with advertising. I wanted to have this discussion at this meeting, on television, on the internet, for everybody to hear, which is the first step in advertising the school, so that people know what we're talking about. We're talking about creating an online school in the city. So anybody tuned in, anybody listening in, anybody that might see a report in the paper would know about it. That was one of the primary reasons for having this pulled for discussion. The other thing is, if we pull students that are already in the district, does that realize a savings to the district in terms of per pupil cost?
If we would attract students currently attending an online school and to our online school rather than the one they're currently attending, yes, there would be a positive financial impact from that, because our cost of offering the online school is actually less than we are paying for the child to attend their current online school.
I'm more looking at pulling students from our own bricks and mortar school to our online school. Do we realize any savings if that were to occur?
That is not our targeted audience. That's not our targeted audience. However, if we would have a student that's attending a current PPS brick and mortar school and for reasons of, whatever, they would be saying, we're leaving, we're going to an online school, and they would want to attend our online school option. It doesn't really affect a true savings because, in the sense, pulling one child out of a class, the class still costs the same amount of money because you're not going to reduce anything because there's one less child in that room. So typically, it's not going to, that would not necessarily result in any savings. And I hope that answers your question.
Partially, but I'm looking at what if a lot of our children decide to go to our online school that are already in the district, just by choice? Who knows what education is going to look like 20, 30 years from now, to the point where maybe all children are online rather than worrying about the snow, worrying about transportation, worrying about I guess as we evolve technologically, as we evolve, into the future, the fact that children are doing online now, and they're only doing online outside the district because the option is not available in the district. But then those children still, it's not an issue because it doesn't matter which online, but there may be some with Pittsburgh pride that want to do the Pittsburgh online school rather than an outlying district school. So I'm just looking at the possibilities, because eventually if kids start talking about it, start hearing about it, and some of the kids that are online now start telling the other kids how relaxing it is, how much fun it is. I don't have to get up early in the morning. I don't have to wait for a bus in the cold. I don't have to go through all the hassles of the traditional brick and mortar school. It may be, attractive to some students. So that's my line of questioning, also to continue the conversation about it. But thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Suzuki.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Dr. Hawley.
Mr. Weiss, can you tell me, since we're going to open up our own online school, will children still have the option to go to a cyber charter school, since we have a school?
Yes, students will continue to have that option. It is our hope that students that are currently enrolled in cyber charter schools will find this online school to be a more attractive option for, in addition to other reasons. There's promise eligibility if they do that. Those who want to enroll in a cyber charter may find this an attractive option as well, but they still have the ability to go to attend a cyber charter school if they wish. So the answer is that we will, the availability of cyber charter schools in brick and mortar charters doesn't change. We just hope that this will be a more attractive option, which will lead to some financial savings for the district, and we believe the committee believes will provide a better educational experience for these children than some of these cyber charter options that are out there now.
Okay, so the children that are currently in a charter school, an online charter school, they have the option to stay. But if any child wants to go to an online charter school, online school, will they only be able to go to our online schools? Now, since if we vote for this, we'll have it.
No, they still have the option to go to others.
Oh, they still have the option. Okay, thank you. The main concern that I have is that we really haven't had an opportunity to actually look at that curriculum. The person that actually looked at the curriculum for the charter school that the Waterfront Learning is no longer here. So that was a concern of mine. But I do want to thank Mr. Campbell for going out and actually looking at the equipment that the students will be getting. So, Mr. Campbell, would you give us a feedback on that?
Dr. Hawley, we met with the AIU on today, and I did have a chance to look at the equipment that will be assigned to students. Currently, they offer two basic types of computers, HPs and Dells, that are very robust and high-quality machines.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I just wanted to make sure that those students that would be doing the online curriculum at home would, or wherever they're at, would have the opportunity to have equipment that was suitable for them to use. Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mr. Brentley.
Yeah, Dr. Lane, can you, since this is kind of new for us, just some questions that I'm not clear on. Can you or do we have a system in place to monitor principals in terms of principals possibly using this as similar to what some use CEP for? Hard to handle students or students with low scores, and suggesting or strongly urging that they would sign up for that, and of course getting them out of that school. Number two, you mentioned the target audience. I am uncomfortable with approving this item the way it is unless we plug a figure in there. It's like having an open check to a consultant, and while everyone is honest, it's just not good business sense to say, here's the rate, and we have no limit. If we're going to grow incrementally, 100 every year in terms of going after those students, then we should plug it in here and say, for this year, not to exceed the 100 student mark, and then next year you adjust it. And then finally, the will we or are we, or is there any kind of agreement, written or unwritten, that offers incentives to principals, employees, or staff that refers students to the company to sign them up?
As to your first concern, we're going to be carefully screening students that are referred actually out of our brick and mortar schools to attend an online school. There's going to be further discussion on how this will actually take place, but a principal will not be able to just directly place a child into this online school. There's going to be a process that would have to go forward first. In terms of the target number, we're not anticipating, what we're talking about is kind of a soft rollout. We're not anticipating we're going to start with 100 or start with 50, because our costs are directly tied to the exact number of students we have. So there isn't a cap, actually, but we did anticipate we might have around 100 students or so by the end of the year. And we certainly can keep the board advised as to how that enrollment looks, on a monthly basis, or however the board might like to receive that. So that's not, I don't think that should be of concern to you, because we can certainly keep you informed on that. And in terms of offering, I think you asked me, and I'm clarifying here, did you ask me if we were going to offer incentives to our staff to get children to go to the school?
No, my question was, because something like this is almost like a commissioned salesperson, people find ways to make money. And so my question was, are we monitoring, or is there something in place to either prohibit it or to make sure that it doesn't become a part-time income for some employees, sending students to this program and arranging some kind of arrangements with the company or others when they get the person signed up? I don't know, it's new to me. And so I thought to raise that question now to make sure that we either put something in place, number one, or number two, or can this be listed as something either illegal or unethical, or something that we don't promote or support or suggest? So it's a question to make sure that we don't do it. It's not saying, should we do it?
Okay, there's certainly no plan or design or desire to have anyone engaging in that kind of behavior, and I would consider that to be unethical, and I don't know, Mr. Weiss, if that's illegal or not, but it certainly sounds like it. So that would not be an appropriate behavior on behalf of a staff member.
Okay. And then finally, you mentioned a number. Are you prepared to plug in a number here at all, Doctor? I'm just constantly thinking about the finances of this district and how we need to keep our eye on the finance. I mean, even if you set 100, set it at 100 and any other additional fees, and you put that dollar figure there, but at least we know what we're looking at. And so, are we prepared at all to put a number, to plug in a number?
I would prefer if we did not, and the reason I'm suggesting that the board would consider that, we don't anticipate a big onslaught of students, that's one thing, but of course, not having done it before, it would be very hard for us to predict. However, I will like to remind the board that if we are addressing students that are in our targeted audience, students that are currently already in an online setting, that this is not an actual cost to us, it's an actual savings to us simply because of the differential between what we are currently paying their cyber charter and the amount it will cost us to provide the education. So, but as I said, we'd be happy to keep the board apprised as to what enrollment is looking like, and if at some point think it would be appropriate, I think we certainly could discuss that with you or make a recommendation. But I wouldn't like to put a cap to start. I'd like you to let us get started first, and we'll keep you apprised as to what enrollment looks like.
Thank you.
Mr. McCray.
I just want to emphasize, and I think Mr. Sumter, usually you missed it, this is the only online school that city residents can get the Pittsburgh Promise from. Thank you.
Ms. Shealy.
Dr. Lane, it would be nice to have, and since you suggested it, I'll just second your suggestion, a monthly update on your enrollment progress.
We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions on number 10. We'll move on to number 13 on the Pacific Education Group, Inc. that was pulled at agenda review. Any questions, concerns, comments on number 13?
Yes,
Dr. Hawley.
this is one of the ones that I wanted pulled because I wanted, I had asked that this group who does Courageous Conversations also be part of a retreat for the board or a professional development workshop for the board. And I was under the impression that we were going to have that placed in the given to us for this year. For this month.
Dr. Hawley, that would be
Between
decided
us?
by the board.
Oh,
Yeah,
do we need to do a board tab?
Well, first we need to have a board discussion because there's already 2 suggestions of board training, so we would have to
board
talk about it.
So you're going to tell us what those board, because I haven't heard of any other board trainings.
Can we discuss it later?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I want to be clear that I want this group, so I just want to put that out there publicly. I thought it was going to be a part of this meeting today.
No, that's
I'm
a board
sorry.
decision.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
When are we going to have it then?
When are we together? The next time we're together, bring it up when we're all together.
Okay, I'll get you right before we leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on number 10? 13. Keep me honest. Okay. I'll move on to number 16, Dr. Judy Johnston, that was pulled. Dr. Hawley.
Yes, I asked to have this pulled. I am a supporter of Dr. Johnson's work. However, Dr. Johnson has taken on a new role as the president of the board for A-plus schools. And that is an organization that actually evaluates the board, the Pittsburgh board. And I'm questioning whether that was if that would be a conflict of interest. Mr. Weiss, can you tell us? give them the answer that I asked you.
I've reviewed this issue. It was brought to my attention prior to the, several days prior to this. The district does not have a contract with A+ Schools. A+ Schools is an organization that does the activity that Dr. Hawley has described. I mean, there is no legal conflict of interest in a consultant to the district being involved in some other volunteer activity that may involve the district. Now, if A+ Schools may have an issue with her being contractually involved with the district in which A+ Schools is involved with board evaluation, but there is no legal conflict, and I have so advised Dr. Hawley, and I sent that through Ms. Wenger, so I don't know if the board received that, but that's basically what I've stated to Dr. Hawley in response to her question about this.
Thank you. Again, I still have some concern about a person that's in an organization that's going to actually evaluate the board's performance. It does sort of make it a little, even though it's legal, still sort of muddies the waters. But again, I have to say that her work is exemplary. I'm not going to deny that. I want to make that very clear. I just don't want it to be confused with her job as the board president for A+ Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Any other questions on numbers? Mr. Brentley, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to echo some of those concerns. This is an appropriate item where we should be throwing out that word transparency. While Dr. Johnson, I believe, has been a contractor or a consultant over the last 3 or 4 years with this district, and I believe at a pretty large amount, if I'm not mistaken. There is a perception of a conflict. There is a perception of a slight advantage over others. We cannot be misunderstood here. A+'s role is one of a political action committee. A+ is knee-deep in the politics of the board, but then they're also billed as advocates for parents. And so they're getting it both ways, and now to be able to have someone affiliated or associated with their board actually getting in a business relationship may not be illegal, but in terms of trying to show that we are not showing any favoritism to any particular group or organization, we're here for excellence for all, that kind of creates a negative image. And so I agree with Dr. Hawley. I will not be supporting it. And one of the things that strikes in my mind is that while A+ has often said that they are advocates for the district and for parents and advocates for education, I can remember just a couple of years ago the Dr. Barnett from the NAACP Education Committee often coming to public hearings, expressing a concern to serve on committees, to be parts of panels. We did not extend that to them. I know of the folks even within the Westinghouse alumni who's expressed an interest of being a part. We were selective. We did not extend them an opportunity to come in and to be a part and to give them the kind of access that we have given A+. A+ has a meeting. We don't even discuss it. We automatically go. We advertise. Our staff is there. We are participants. We don't give that kind of access to every other organization. So it does represent a conflict. I do not know much about Dr. Johnson. I do know what has come before us in terms of the contracts. Actually, 3 years ago, I raised questions about the rate on one of the contracts. and of course it was pushed through anyway. So I am raising the concern just for the sake of those other individuals and organizations who want to be a part but are not allowed to be a part of this district. And here we have a relationship with A+, and now I'm extending even a business relationship with someone also affiliated with them is a slight conflict. So once again, I will not be supporting this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on number 16? Mr. Eisler.
I think that one of the things that Dr. Holly said was important is that Dr. Johnson has been working with this district long before she became president of the A+ board, if she is. I mean, A+ is a separate organization, has no connection with the school district whatsoever. It is, I believe, a 501c3. It's not a political action committee. Under IRS law, two very, very different listings. But I don't see the conflict because we do not have a direct relationship with this organization.
Dr. Holly.
We do have a relationship with this organization if the organization is giving us a report card. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I get a report card, I got a relationship with them. They're watching us. They evaluate how we do our job. So that's one entity. And I don't have a problem with that. Don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with the work that they do. I don't have, that's fine with me as well. I was just concerned about the fact that the board president is now going to be hired again by the district to do work that she's more than qualified to do. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, she can do the work. I just want to be very clear that it's from my perception there, it seems like it's a little mudding of the waters, that's all. And I just wanted to be clear that there was nothing legally wrong with that, and Mr. Weiss did give me that information, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. We'll now move on to item number 17, Dr. Connie Sims, that was pulled at agenda review. Any comment? Dr. Hawley?
Yes, this is one of my, another concern that I have. Dr. Lane, we paid Mrs. Bevins, or maybe Mr. Weiss can answer this. We paid Dr. Bevins $208,000 as a contract, two separate contracts. Now, on that contract, it has identified the Bevin Group. So can you tell me, does anybody know who is a part of the group, or is it just her herself?
I didn't hear the last part of your question.
It's identified as a group, Bevin Group. So can you tell me if this is, who's a part of the group? Because I was under the impression that Dr. Sims was a part of that group.
My understanding is that Dr. Sims does do work for the Bevin Group on occasion, but she also does independent consulting on her own. So our contract with Dr. Sims is with her as an individual, not through the Bevin Group. She does both.
No, I have a problem with this one, primarily because Dr. Sims was actually working with Dr. Bevins for the entire time that we were doing RISE. She was a part of that program. Now, we are now paying her separately at $180,000 for the same amount of time that we're paying Dr. Bevins for her work with us as well. So first she was a part of the group, now she's not a part of the group, and she's getting paid separately. You're shaking your head. Tell me, well, explain to me so I'll understand.
Yeah, and perhaps there's something here I'm missing, but my understanding is that the time of the two people has been broken apart, basically. So we're paying Dr. Bevin for her time, and we're paying Dr. Sims for her time. So rather than have them under the umbrellas of the Bevin Group, they're broken. The time of the two individuals has been broken apart.
So in essence, what's happening is that the monies that you paid before this contract, it was very substantial, and I don't have the correct number there, but it was much more than what we're paying her now, Dr. Bevins. So it's really the same amount of money that we paid before, that large sum, but now it's broken into two parts, two groups.
I wouldn't say it's the exact same amount of money because I don't have both in front of me, so I can't tell you that's exactly the same. I'd have to look at them both to say that for sure. But all I can say is that they are broken into, it is broken into two pieces, but I can't tell you it's exactly the same. It could be more days or fewer days. I don't know that for sure.
Again, Dr. Sims is more than qualified to do this work, and she's done an outstanding job each and every time I've been with her. So I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem with the Bevin group being a group, we don't know who's in the group, and now we have two separate contracts. And that's where I have issue with number 17.
Any other comments on number 17? Okay, thank you, Dr. Hawley. We'll now move on to number 46, authorization to maintain on-site gifted services at Pittsburgh-Colfax K-8, Pittsburgh-Dilworth pre-K-5, and Pittsburgh-Grandview K-5 for the 2012-13 school year. Any questions, comments? Mr. Brentley?
I raised the concerns at the agenda review. Had we not moved to attack poor schools, primarily African-American schools, and closing schools, one in particularly Northview Elementary, that school, that community would be benefiting from this program. And so this is a perfect example of how over the last year or so, 2 years, how decisions that we make take out the poor students in the community, primarily the African-American students, while other schools and other neighborhoods can benefit from this wonderful program. I will be voting no on this item, wishing those students well, but voting no and standing for poor children in public housing. Just because they're black, just because they're poor, we do not have the right to take them out of the services and opportunities that they need. By the way, these programs where they would have normally participated in will not follow them to the other schools. We cannot forget, with the closing of Northview, we are now taking students that 60, 70% of them were walkers, will now have to find transportation for them. Those parents do not have access to the schools in which their children will be going to, and those students will be split up between 2, maybe 3 schools, possibly one of those schools having even a lower achievement than what they're leaving. Northview was slowly starting to climb and to do some positive things. So I just want to remind my colleagues here, you have a responsibility to that group as well. And when we do things like the item here before us, we need to keep in mind that every decision that we make, we need to make sure that there's a balance. So I'll be voting no on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions? Dr. Hawley.
Yes, on number 46, I want to say thank you to the person who whatever employee actually did the grid to give us the information on this particular project. I'm hopeful that this project will be expanded to even more schools to include some of the rich work that I've seen going on at Pittsburgh-Dilworth and also at Fulton, who isn't a part of this grant, but they are doing a lot of this work even in their school. So I'm really excited about these opportunities for these elementary schools that will be doing this work. And I am hopeful that we will see the value of this to include more students in enriching activities that they're doing right now in their schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Very quickly on this one, I'm assuming that what we see before us emanated from the pilot program that was conducted in the district. It would have been nice at the pilot presentation that we were told the recommendations then rather than being presented like this. So the question I would have at this time is, how many schools were in the pilot? How many schools are not in the pilot? Are there any schools that are losing the gifted on-site services and are going to the Gifted Center that were in the pilot? Just to get a better understanding of the lay of the land regarding that, because it makes it look like there's only 3 schools having this at this point in time, and I guess the 4th would be Fulton, that's, even though they're doing it, but not listed as a part of this initiative. And just to get a better understanding of, was it good, was it bad, why did we keep it, why didn't we keep it, what's the justification for sending it to these schools and not other schools, et cetera, and should we expand it or not? And is the pilot officially over at this point in time?
Mr. Sumter, to answer your last question first, pilot period is officially over. What we're doing is what we're doing now. And the schools that were involved in the pilot were Pittsburgh, Colfax, Dilworth, Grandview, Fort Pitt, and Northview. And of course, as I know everyone is aware, Fort Pitt and Northview closed at the end of this last school year. In particular, since there's particular concern around the Northview students, we did see where students were anticipated for next year there were 6 students identified as gifted at Northview. 1 is anticipated to Barack Obama. 2 are anticipated to SciTech. 1 is anticipated to attend Schiller. 1 is anticipated to attend Allegheny, 6 through 8. And 1 anticipated to attend King, K through 8. The purpose of the pilot was to see if we could provide gifted services in a way that would expand the support gifted children receive rather than have it be a one-day-a-week program. One of the processes that developed as a part of our training that we had from Purdue University was what was called cluster grouping, and several of our schools, including Fulton that you mentioned, and Dilworth, had really done well with cluster grouping. We have other schools that were not part of the pilot that actually began doing total school cluster grouping model, and that model is basically to decrease the range of kids in a single classroom so teachers can better meet the needs of all the children. It is not a tracking model, so there's still mixed abilities in a class, but the range is a little bit smaller. We did get good improvement in math in 3 of our pilot schools, modest improvement, and those were Colfax, Dilworth, and Fort Pitt. Modest improvement at 1 school and actually a decline in only 1 school, and that was Northview. So the pilot schools either outperformed or were not different from their comparison school students. So we did get some good results. There is also parent feedback information. I'm not going to read that to the board, but we did get positive parent feedback. So I believe that in terms of the measures that we use, that we would consider that the pilot was successful, and we want to extend it as a on-site service to some of our schools next year. In terms of going forward, there are, of course, financial constraints that would keep us from doing a lot of expansion, but from what we're learning, there are some of our schools, even without using a on-site gifted teacher, want to do total school cluster grouping, and that can have an impact on student achievement as well. So we're hoping to be able to support those who would want to embark on that next year.
Thank you very much. I think that's the bottom line of a pilot, the results, and if the pilot is showing positive results, that's all the more reason to expand this throughout the district. Thank you.
Ms. Shealy.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Dr. Lane, again, I would also like to thank you for providing the additional information, but you'll have to forgive me, but I'm not necessarily convinced that this shows positive results. I don't understand that these numbers are statistically any different, the increases, or that the parent surveys, while they were done among the gifted population, the parents of gifted students, they weren't done among the whole school populations. And these programs actually do affect the whole schools. So while I do appreciate the additional information, I'm still not completely convinced that the cost is providing the benefits directly to these schools. That said, I will support, does this item have an end date? It doesn't, does it?
No, it does not have an end date, because it, as I said, it's no longer a pilot, it's just a part of the educational program.
So, you know, we don't typically approve. Okay. Yeah. I would like to understand better how the numbers that we were presented on the 25th actually show increases or differences. Because I think one number is like 20, you're comparing 25.1 to 24.5, and I could argue all day that those numbers are the same in a statistical sense. So I just would like more information that proves that the pilot was successful. Thank you, Mrs. Suzuda.
Thank you, Mrs. Shealy. Dr. Hawley.
First of all, the program in and of itself, I thought that it would have been important for the board to actually hear from the principal as to how well it influenced the rest of the building. I think that the parents who came in to give testimony, I'm talking specifically about Dilworth, made it very clear that they were, as a group, very committed to this type of education for their children. Also, this is the same type of cluster grouping that you're actually doing in the high schools, where CAS students are being mixed with children who are identified as non-gifted, but children who work very hard to get the same grade. So we're already doing this in the high school. Here we are. You're not doing it in the high school? Pardon me? What? That's what I'm saying. But this is what you're trying to do.
It's my understanding this grouping is to take the highest level kids. I hate to do this. The highest level kids with like the third level kids and the second level kids with the fourth level kids, where CAS is putting the first and the second together and the third and the fourth together.
Is that true?
What I'd suggest is that clearly the board would like further discussion on this, and I think we certainly can reschedule this on an upcoming education committee meeting and get into it a little more deeply. And I'd prefer to do that. I can give you pretty high-level information, but clearly I think you want a deeper discussion. The model we're doing at high schools, and I believe we did it either 2 or 3 high schools this year, and we'll be doing it more high schools next year, is called talent development model. And what that does is, rather than with children that are identified as gifted in CAS classes, are mixed with children who also are high ability, want to take the class, and are willing to do the work. And so the CAS class would be composed of both gifted and students not identified as gifted, as gifted, but students that clearly are able to do the work.
I thought it was. I mean, maybe it was me. But I really don't want to have this pulled. I really want this to go forward because, pardon me? I really think that these schools have a vested interest in doing this kind of work, and parents are excited about having this opportunity to go forward with this next year. But I still think that we can still have the principal or whomever come in and give us information about this project.
Go ahead.
Please understand, I wasn't suggesting we pull it, because if you pull it, we're going to be behind the curve for starting school. However, it's clear you want to know more about it. That's what I was suggesting.
Good. Ms. Shealy.
Just to clarify, the cluster grouping is not the same in high school as in this model. In high school, the grouping is such that the CAS kids and the high-achieving kids are in the same classrooms. In this model, it's the high-achieving kids are grouped with the average-achieving kids and the low-achieving kids in one classroom. The groupings are more diverse in the elementary schools than they are in the high school.
Okay, so next month, they'll come in and they'll just give us information on, we're not going to have that on Education Committee?
We don't have education next month.
Okay. Okay, well then they'll come in August, okay, whenever. But we'll get information from the principals so that we'll know, everybody will know exactly what they're doing. Okay.
Ms. Shealy, as chairperson of the Education Committee, could you schedule it when your schedule allows?
Thank you, because August is essentially devoted to PSSA review.
But it's recognized that we want to learn more about it in depth. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on number 46? Okay, moving on to number 47, which is the authorization to open the Pittsburgh Online Academy 6 to 12 school beginning with the 2012-2013 school year. Well, there was a little bit of discussion about it earlier. Is there any more discussion that anyone wants to have at this time? No? All right. Mr. Weiss, can we, Mr. Brentley.
I have a question on number 52. And I just want to ask Dr. Lane, we've extended the contract for the NYU and Dr. Pedro Noguero. We extended it to the Westinghouse program to help the Westinghouse get some things together. And I want to ask, why are we not extending the same professional services to University Prep, who is in need of the same services?
Mr. Brentley, University Prep had already decided that they would prefer, they had already actually, and you had approved, that they received Success Schools support next year. So actually what we'll have is 2 schools receiving support from Success Schools and 2 schools from Dr. Noguero and NYU.
Okay, but here's my concern, Doctor. For the sake of consistency, there's clearly, these are the 2 struggling schools. We've been, they're in rough shape. And following the lead of Dr. Holly, our educator here on the board, I understand that Dr. Noguero is up for the challenge, and also from other community folks who are aware of his work say that he is up for the challenge. Why would we not assign him to the University Prep, because some of the same problems exist? And now, in light of the letter that we've just received from the community group who is a partner in that, who has major issues with Success Schools, I guess for the life of me, I just don't understand why would we not take the better of the 2. There is no question, as I even mentioned beginning of the meeting, the history or the questionable background of Success through CEP, through CAP, through whoever else, or titles that they're using. And we have Dr. Noguera, we have reopened and extended his contract, and clearly is an opportunity where the community there in the Hill District is not supportive of the Success Schools. And so why can we not consider that, number one? And number two, would it not serve a real purpose for us to be able to refer to one service provider for two schools that are struggling?
Mr. Brentley, I've answered it as best I could. One of the things that I do think is important when you put a support into a school is that it's the support that the principal has asked for and feels that they can work with. I know that in the case of Dr. Noguera's work, this isn't originally even what he was coming for. He was coming to help us develop our plan around increasing equity in terms of our educational outcomes for kids. Because he is very much engaged in work in high schools, we asked him to help support the efforts at Perry and Oliver. The principal was interested in doing that, so we did. What happened was the Westinghouse principal also was interested in having Dr. Noguera support the work at Pittsburgh Westinghouse next fall. So we really had to work hard, frankly, to come up with the additional funds to help support this second school. We managed to do it by using part of the school funds at Westinghouse, part of the school, that's why you have these different account numbers, part of the school funds at Westinghouse, school funds from Perry, and as well as some funds that we had in our grant. Kindly, the Heinz Endowments was willing to allow us to use our grant for this purpose because it is slightly different than what we originally intended. But they were willing to, and they understood, you know, the need to support Westinghouse and were willing to do that. So that's how this kind of evolved. And to be very honest with you, even if another school, UPrep or any other school, would come forward today and say, yes, we want you to extend this contract, I really don't have the means to do it at this point. There would have to be additional funds procured from somewhere in order to support it, even if they were asking for it, which to my knowledge they have not.
Well, I'll move on, but I'll just say this. Principals can suggest. It is the board that makes the decisions. And so we're helpful and always thankful for principals to share, but it is our decision to make the best decision for the entire district, and in this case, for those particular schools. You have two different service providers, one who provides the necessary service that both schools need. The one has a questionable background, and it should be a no-brainer. And it was also inconsistent in terms of what we can expect from them. One is providing a behavioral kind of thing, and the other is digging to the root of the problem and with supportive data to turn the things around. And I think that's what we should be interested in. So, you know, I'm disappointed that we don't, and by the way, the dollars shouldn't be an issue. We identified the dollars for Success Schools, if I'm not mistaken, is close to $500,000. So those dollars are there. We've identified them, we found them. We just haven't made the right suggestion. So the community is now once a partner with this board. They are now at odds because they believe we're not providing the right fit for what they need for that school. And then here we are in Westinghouse possibly moving in the right direction, and we have no consistency in terms of how to get our arms around this. I disagree totally, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Dr. Hawley.
Just to make clarification as well, I did not vote for that tab last month for that very reason. The Success Schools is really a model for schools that are designed for children who are at risk. Of course, we have those juvenile justice, dropout recovery, and undercredited students. However, why is it that those schools are actually, this program is actually going to schools that really needed more support in terms of developing a more academic focus in that building. I don't understand why Dr. Noguera could not have made another contract to support University Prep in the same way that he's doing at Perry.
I'm not saying it would have been impossible, but I am saying that originally we had not intended Dr. Noguera to work at any place but Perry Oliver. That was our original plan. That's what the contract was for. That was that. The work was extended to Westinghouse at the request. Dr. Noguera actually had some interest in supporting Westinghouse, as well as the fact that the principal was supportive of having them support her during the course of the next year. Because at the time we began working on the Westinghouse plan, we had already had approval and contracted with Success Schools for 2 schools. And so it was done. It was done. So I'm saying that these 2 things kind of developed separately. And the Success Schools, in terms of working with a couple of our schools, we actually had several schools that wanted Success Schools to work with them. They were willing to only do a couple of schools because they didn't want to get spread too thin and not be very effective. So we narrowed that down to the 2. The supports are slightly different. But I do believe that both of them are spending considerable emphasis on developing a positive school culture. And having seen the work that has taken place over the past year at Clayton, they certainly made what I would say is a big turnaround there. So it wasn't that we were trying to exclude anybody or anything like that. It's just that they kind of developed separately, and the Westinghouse piece for Dr. Noguera's work was really a late add-on.
Well, you know, I understand what you're saying, and it's not that I'm in total disagreement with you. However, I find it very disconcerting when schools that are predominantly African American, that we're looking at managing student behavior rather than looking at a comprehensive piece in helping to change that school culture around both academically and behaviorally. But this type of program basically looks at changing student behavior, and that's where I have the problem. We can't always think of schools that are predominantly African American as places that are totally out of control, because that's not necessarily true within this school district. Some people are able to do that work and do that work very well. So I'm not disagreeing with you totally, but I just am disappointed that we had to have this conversation again about having a program in a school solely based on behavior.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Dr. Holly, if I might, I don't believe this is solely based on behavior. At least the young people that I spoke with, it wasn't like a low-level, just behave yourself kind of thing. I talked to young people who were clearly engaged in their work, that saw themselves as leaders, that were actually working with the staff to lead the school in some ways that I found just extremely gratifying. So I wouldn't want it to sound like this is just some low level, can we just control the kids kind of thing, because I think that's a waste of time and certainly not worthy of our children. I also would not describe either school as, quote, out of control, unquote. Clearly, both schools, we want a positive academic climate in that school, and learning environment is part of our work. This is to help support that learning environment. This is not the only support that will be in university prep this next year, because we're going to be spending considerable time from the district staff to help support the school as well. So it's not just solely sending that one sole support out to them. It is our intention to support them in the ways they need it.
I hope so, but I just want to make clarification. It's not just two schools, University Prep and Faison. It's also at the school that we have spent an enormous amount of money at, and that's Martin Luther King, K-8. So we're not just talking about the two schools, we're really talking about three schools that we've turned over to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes on the report. I'll be voting no on number 9, number 10, number 16, 17, and 46.
Ms. Colazy?
Yes.
Ms. Fink?
Yes.
Dr. Holly?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on number 17.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. Cray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on item 17 on page 7.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We will now move on to the committee report on business and finance submitted by Mrs. Colazy, Business Chair, and Mr. McCray, Finance Chair, and their committee. Agenda items number 19 and 21 were pulled for further discussion at agenda review. Are there any additional items in the finance and business report that board members would like pulled for further discussion at this time? Mr. McCray.
Number 28.
Number 28. Any others? All righty. We will begin discussion this evening with number 19, dealing with the Fourth River Development, LLC, that was pulled at agenda review. Comments, questions? All right, I guess we got them resolved. That's great. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr.
Yeah.
Brentley.
This is the company, and this is to Mr. Weiss, this is the company's consultant that has been selected to manage the sale of the unused buildings. First, I would like to get a current or updated list of those buildings that we are listing for available to the public for purchase. Secondly, Mr. Weiss, I will try to repeat what I shared at the agenda review, and that is we should make it very, very clear who's on first. And what I mean by that is who is in charge. That is, this company's role and responsibility is to help to market, and in the case of a sale, to work with the sale. Any and all offers that's submitted to this district must come through the board for approval, and that is regardless of how small or how large the offer is. If there is hand money and a signed contract, then it must come to this board for approval. Some 3 or 4 years ago, we had an opportunity to sell a building, Bergwin School, until we had to read in the newspaper that the offer was made for $350,000. The offer never came before this board. We never had a chance to discuss it nor to vote on it, and we lost those potential dollars to the district, not to mention we could have sold the building. So regardless of what the offer is, everything must come before this board for approval. Number 2, Mr. Weiss, if you could make sure that in this agreement that they are communicating to any and all potential buyers that they are required to complete a community benefits meeting, simply meeting a meeting in the community where they are responsible for sharing with the community their proposed use for the building, the cost, the jobs, any adjustment in traffic or whatever it may be to that community. And then, of course, the community would have time to communicate to the board prior to the sale if they are in support. And then, and I believe that's it. So please, if you can make sure that that's in the agreement and making it very clear that we make the final decisions. We vote and should see any and all offers made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. I apologize, I didn't see your hand. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. On item number 19, that's the Board of Directors, School District of Pittsburgh authorized its proper officers to enter into a contract with Fourth River Development LLC as a consultant for the management and sale of unused and unnecessary school buildings. Hopefully, the definition of unnecessary will be such that all board members can readily recognize the unnecessary buildings in the district. We know the ones that are unused, but the ones that are unnecessary, and then have a good understanding of the ones that are necessary and the relationship to the student population in the school district. As we speak, it may or may not still be in session, but there was a meeting this evening conducted by Councilman Bill Peduto regarding Shenley High School and the organizations and communities surrounding that building. If efforts like that were to take place after either this company's on board or not, how do those processes, or is it envisioned that those processes will come together? It may be that this company is marketing a building in one direction and the community saying it's to be used in another direction. How do we deal with that or resolve that, or we just take that all into consideration when we vote? Maybe that's the answer. Has any thought been given to that?
If I can respond, I think there's a diverse list of buildings, both geographically and utility and so-called highest and best use. I think it is clear that community input will be necessary when buildings are sold. And I think the board has to consider that as these buildings come before you. It may very well be that some of them the board will find are very difficult to market. Some will be easier to market. But the advantage of this particular proposal is that it's putting all that process in the hands of an entity that is trained and equipped to do it, rather than the district staff, which clearly that is not, there's no capacity to do this. So I believe the results will be satisfactory, and as in all cases, the board of directors, school directors, has the sole power to sell buildings, no one else, and it comes before you for a vote.
Thank you. Hopefully, if this were to pass, it's not going down the same path that this board has gone before with other entities that have been talked to market our buildings. And because we haven't had the big flood of requests for purchasing our buildings, how much more different does this company factor into the process that hasn't transpired thus far?
Well, first of all, this company consists of individuals who are trained in this profession it is to market and sell real estate. That is a profession and it requires training and experience. And the results of the RFP clearly established that this firm had the greatest capacity to do that. Clearly, part of the marketing is understanding the interest that may be out there, tapping into segments of the business community and development community that have to be approached rather than just running an ad. They will have a marketing strategy involved, which is important. And I believe this is a significant difference in anything we've done before, because no other proposal that I've seen or dealt with up to this time has the range of activities that this company has, including realistic appraisal of the buildings so the board understands what the realistic market value is. Obviously, this contract has a termination provision like all of these consultant contracts do, and if the experience is less than satisfactory, we can take appropriate action and give 30 days notice.
Thank you. Was the contract or the proposal provided in our agenda review packet? Do we have that, or can we see a copy of it? That's,
We'll provide the proposal to the board.
thank you. Mrs.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Any additional discussion on number 19? Okay, moving on to number 21, Pete Jeffrey Associates, that was pulled at agenda review. Ms. Shealy.
Dr. Lane, and it's only been a week, but have you had the opportunity to look into playground services for the children who will be at the Peabody Building early child care?
We're still working on that. We had a couple of ideas after the issue was raised. We have a meeting set that we're going to be meeting with some entities on some possible things we might do to make that work out a little more smoothly, frankly. So we hope that we should be able to give you some more information on that soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. We'll move on to number 28, which is tax collection. Mr. McCray.
I just want to bring everybody's attention to the fact that we're paying the city to collect our taxes, which, you know, we've done it all the time, but we're also giving them $12 million a year out of our, we're collecting, what was it the state made us give them $12 million a year for again? Okay, thank you.
Anything else on number 28? All right, if there's no further discussion on these items, Mr. Brentley.
Just a quick one, Mr. Weiss, if you can explain number 31.
Pardon me, what number?
31.
Thank you.
31.
This is, this represents extra work that was requested by the facilities department of this contractor on the Kappa, for want of a better word, the Kappa Middle School project, and was performed. There is significant written documentation as to the actual request of the facilities department. Requests for payment were made numerous times. It finally came to the attention of the Chief Operations Officer and myself that there were sums due this contractor. The total amount of the agreed to is about a third less than the claim, and it avoids significant additional expense that could be awarded to this contractor under the prompt payment law. So that's essentially what this is. It's a settlement of a claim for work that was actually requested by our facilities department in writing and performed.
What was that dollar amount, Mr. Weiss?
The total amount of the claim was $146,000 plus attorney's fees and plus interest that is provided for under the state law. The total settlement is $110,000 inclusive of everything. So in my view, the district is saving a significant amount of money by settling it in this way.
And so will this company continue, will we continue to do business with this company?
Well, if they are permitted to bid, there is nothing pending right now that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, you know, I am going to be voting no on that item, Mr. Weiss. I believe you recall at least 4 years ago, I flagged this board as chair of the MBEWB program concerning this company getting more than their share of work within the district and just more than their share of repeat business in terms of going back and having administration providing the last minute, we needed this, we needed that, and so on. And I am just trying to raise some concerns here. Somebody's got to be monitoring this. You know, there are some cases where there are certain contractors, it's a revolving door and there's no monitoring the rate, and then they continue to overcharge or have other issues. And here's a case where we're settling it, and thank goodness, but I mean, it's like no one walks away, no harm, no foul. It says a settlement agreement and the general release of this particular company, so no harm, no foul, and they can actually get back in line and it continues on. And so I am disappointed. I understand it's a system that's probably difficult to change, but in the same token, small, women-owned, and legitimate minority businesses can't get access to do business on an honest basis. So for me, as chair, I will be voting no on this item.
Let me just make a couple of comments here. One, this claim dates back to 2009-10. Since that time, there have been significant procedures put in place, principally implemented by Dr. Lane and Mr. Camarda, to prevent these sort of field requests. So we have not seen anything like this since then, and I don't expect to see anything like it again.
Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Mr. Weiss, if we did not accept this settlement, what consequences would arise?
There would be litigation, and with attorney's fees and interest at the rate of 1% a month, provided for under something called the prompt payment law, we could be easily looking at something maybe close to double the settlement amount, plus our cost of defense. So to me, this is a beneficial settlement, keeping in mind the circumstances I've described and keeping in mind that I think there are safeguards in place now. This will not again occur.
So basically, in a general sense, when you accept a settlement, you're almost agreeing that if you were to go to court, you would lose.
I think in this case, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. There being no further discussion, Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes on the report, no on page 9, number 31.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Dr. Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Let's now move on to the report on personnel that is before you. It includes addendums A, B, C, D, E, and F that are before you. Are there any questions on the personnel report at this time? Mrs. Khaleesi.
Madam Chair, I'm assuming that since this report doesn't get to us till the following Friday after agenda review, there would be no requesting any specific item to be pulled for discussion? Okay. I did ask in the personnel office, or in the personnel meeting prior to this meeting, about an item. I asked about several items and how they were ending up in here. But this specific one, I wanted to know why, for an item, and it's not a lot of money, it's not about the money. It's number 3 on page 21. This is to approve 2 teachers, a counselor, and a secretary to work during the summer months. The teachers will be creating groups and managing data for intervention of RTII, creating a school-wide data management system for teachers and students. The ITL2s will be working collaboratively with the principals to create monthly professional development, professional development sessions, opportunities for teachers, and develop innovative ways to integrate technology into the classroom as we finalize our iPad initiative. The counselor will expand upon our mental health services and create new attendance strategies, rewards, incentives, so forth and so on. The secretary will assist with the day-to-day operations, inventory of school supplies, and organizing the book room. My question was that I did not understand how the secretary connected to this work. That the work that the secretary was suggesting the secretary was doing was the day-to-day work that should be within the confines of their regular job for the year. I didn't understand why we were being asked to pay a secretary for extra time to do work that has nothing to do with what they're doing. And I wasn't able to get an answer at the time, I don't think you have one for me now, do you?
Not really much better than what I said to you before, Mrs. Scalise, because the background I have is just what you read. I don't
Yeah.
know more about it. We do know that the school is actually Schiller that is asking for this support over the course of the summer. I don't know that I can describe from this the clear connection of the secretary's work to the work that the others in the school will be doing. I do understand that if teachers and others are working in the school, it certainly might be helpful to have the secretary there to help support their work, because I'm sure that they'll be generating some they may have some support that they need in order to get this plan put together, especially if they're working on putting together a professional development plan around the iPad initiative. So, but I can't get more specific than that, and I don't know how many additional days the secretary will be working, because the amount is not totally clear to me either. But in any case, I wish I could give you more explanation, but that's about as much as I can say.
Well, and I respect that, Dr. Lane. I guess where I'm questioning it is, it's very specific of what the secretary will be assisting: day-to-day operations, inventory of school supplies, and organizing the book room. They don't sound to me like they have anything to do with what the work is that they were asking for to begin with. That's why I guess I'm confused, because what the teachers and I guess the counselors and I guess the ITLs that will also be paid to be here has nothing to do with what the secretary's supposedly supposed to be doing. Who is the assistant superintendent for Schiller?
I am David Maystein, and he's not here this evening.
You know, Dr. Lane, normally micromanaging in this aspect is not something that I like to do. But when I read something of this sort, I have to question it. I mean, I think I have the right to question it. Is there some way that we can resolve this where the secretary is deleted until we get more information?
Mrs. Scalise, we certainly can get more information. What I would ask is if you are willing to, you and your colleagues are willing to go ahead and approve it, we will check it out. And if we find that there really is no need for the secretary, we can certainly not have the secretary work. However, if there's something that we don't understand that really wasn't written clearly into this description, I know that if they would not be able to get approval from you until the end of July, it's too late.
Yeah, the other thing in here, Dr. Lane, that has me questioning, and I'm beginning to question a lot of these items, and there's no dates. There's no dates on this for us to know. I mean, there's no dates to say when this work would take place or not, and that goes for quite a few of them in here. Tell you what, I'm going to abstain on this one. My colleagues can do whatever they choose to do, but I'm going to ask that if possible, Ms. Buller, is it possible that from this point on, these items in the agenda, just these items in the back under payments authorized, I don't know when you get them together, and I hate to put more work on you of all people, but is it possible that just those payments authorized come to the board with agenda review? So that at least we have the opportunity to look at it and ask the questions. Is that possible?
Yes, it seems to me that it would be, and I will certainly try to put the process in place to have that happen.
Okay, but I don't want to cause you any more work. That's not my intention here. It's just so that we have an opportunity to look at it, and then if we question anything of those things, we have the time to do it. Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on number 3 on page 21? Okay, before we go on, I want to ask Ms. Spolar, she has something to say. On number 3, Dr. Hawley? I mean, yeah.
I just want to thank Dr. Lane for letting this go through, because I'm pretty sure that the principal is going to use the secretary in an appropriate manner to help them get the work done that they need to have done for the upcoming school year. It's very important to have the secretary there, number one, to answer the phones while they're doing work probably in another room, but also to actually write the, do the clerical work that needs to be done in order to get ready for the professional development. I just wanted to be clear about that in doing this job myself. So the secretary is very much needed in this process. And I'm sure that the principal at Schiller knows that and wants to make sure that her work is done well for the upcoming school year.
Thank you, Dr. Haller. Are there any comments or questions on number 3 in payments authorized? Okay, Ms. Spolar.
So in the reproductions of the addenda, I have recognized that page 3 of addendum A, which was part of that addendum late this afternoon, but does not appear to have been reproduced. So I looked at the board president, and she just has pages 1 and 2 as well. They were additional closings that correspond to page 2 of addendum C, as openings and closings typically correspond to them personnel actions. So I would like to read those closings into the record, and that document will be available tomorrow. I apologize for that reproduction error. So page 3 of addendum A has, and I do apologize. So page 3 of addendum A would have closed 1 general fund position of school management assistant and 6 supplemental fund positions. 1, the principal incentive pay plan coordinator. 2, a secretary 2. Both of those are in evaluation services. 3, an accountant in early childhood. 4, a speech coordinator in early intervention. 5, a Perkins coordinator in career and technical education. And 6, a technology specialist in career and technical education. And again, those position closings correspond with the actions in addendum C.
Thank you, Ms. Spolar. Okay, I saw several hands go up. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, Dr. Lane, can you explain to me for addendum E, what is the schedule, if there is a schedule for items 1, I believe 1 through 5, if there is schedule in terms of a payout, the amount and the date?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by a payout, Mr. Brentley.
Well, it has here, for these appointments, each has a potential of an annual performance increment up to $2,000 with an annual achievement bonus up to $15,000, subject to limitations set forth in a formally executed employment agreement.
Oh, this is the same performance bonus structure that's been in place for the last 3 years. There's no change there. And the $2,000 amount is based on the actual job evaluation. The $15,000 is, of course, very much tied to student performance targets. Typically, the payout for the bonus amount, similar to what we do with our principals, would be in the fall after we make determination as to whether those targets were achieved or not.
Okay, and then for the bonuses?
In the fall, after determination is made, have the targets been achieved for student performance
Okay,
improvement.
fall meaning, give me a month.
Yeah, typically, I'm thinking it's around the first part of October.
Okay. And so there will be payouts for these items 1 through 5 here this coming October?
Yes, as I said, this is just as it is right now. This is not an addition. This is the same as it is right now.
Okay. Doctor, I will not be supporting this. I just, you know, first of all, we're not going to mention any of the names for your administration. I just think that we as a board with these hard times need to look at this board, or at least for some of the positions, look at them as if we are commissioned salesmen. When you sell and you do extremely well, then it's worthy of the appointments or worthy of the additional raises and the bonuses. But it is extremely hard for me to justify to be able to vote for these items knowing we are, Ms. Spolar, how many people are we voting on in this booklet today that are either laid off or furloughed?
22, I believe.
22. How many are you anticipating for next month?
Approximately 275.
You know, those figures hurt for me, so it is extremely hard for me to accept that. Another concern that I have here, and I want to make it very clear that I am not targeting any individual listed here or any particular title or position, but one would think that if we're constantly hearing of low student enrollment, but we have higher administration costs, and somewhere we have to find a way to get a handle on that. Once again, I have to steal another saying from my colleague who is the educator on the board, and that is, if it doesn't touch the students, then we don't need it. And I know I'm screwing that up, Dr. Holly. But the point being that every dollar that we have should be close to or on the hands of providing the services for the students. And so it just disturbs me. I am supportive. I see the long hours that our staff and administration are putting in, but it would be very, very difficult for me to support this. I have to admit again, just like I have to look into the faces of the hundreds of families coming out of Northview School, where this board made the bright move of closing down a campus and purposely putting 100 low-income parents at such a disadvantage that they will never be able to be a good parent because they won't have access to where their students are going to go. So I'm kind of disappointed it's before us. Also in here, there's another item, I will not call the name, of another young man being demoted. It concerns me, Doctor. I would like to see, just in the last 5 years, the number of demotions, and I'd like to also see a breakdown. How many men, how many African-American men, and what positions were they in? This district is majority African-American, and the diversity is important. But when we go out of the way to demote certain individuals, it makes it look very, very bad in terms of opportunities for all in the district. So there's an item in here as well. And so it disturbs me greatly. And what I will be doing on this item, I will be voting no on the entire human resource report. And a question to Mr. Weiss for next month, for the 275 that we will be furloughing. Mr. Weiss, I will not be here, I will be out of town, but I will not be able to call in. Can I register my no vote for next month, or can I send you something in writing that would have my vote registered for next month's human resource report as well?
Mr. Brentley, a vote must be at a meeting by live voice, as it's called. It's not only a Sunshine Act requirement, it's a constitutional requirement. So a board member may not vote in absentia. It either has to be on the phone or here. Certainly you're free to express your view of the action when you are next here, but you cannot vote and not be here either in live or on the phone where people can hear you and you can hear the meeting.
Thank you very much. Well, what I'll be doing, I'll just say a no. I'll do a double no, one for next month as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you. While we're on addendum E, are there any further comments? Dr. Lane.
And I want to thank Dr. Rudiak for reminding me of this. The reason the payout is a part of the contracts for assistant superintendents currently, but a reminder to me and reminder to the board that they voluntarily sacrificed their payouts for 11-12, so they will not be getting a payout in October, and I think it's important that the board and the community know that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on addendum E? Anyone? I was just going to go around, but stay on, once we have a subject, stay on that subject. No? Okay. Mrs. Fink? Personnel report. Oh, we're not voting. No, we're still talking. Okay, Mrs. Fink. Dr. Hall.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to make a mistake like I did before. Okay, thank you. I want to turn to page 17 of the personnel report. Transfers from one position to another. Thank you. Okay, you have a lot of, and I guess this is for Mrs. Spolar. There are a lot of changes for the Teen Parent Advocate Career Development to Teen Parent Advocate Career Development. Can you tell me why we're changing this, and are we still having the same program that we've had before?
I think I could answer, but I'm sure Ms. Ripper, I will defer to you. Thank you.
The Teen Advocate, the Teen Advocate position has been expanded to a 12-month position. Based on the state requirements. So they're going to work 12 months instead of 10 months.
Are they going to be doing the
Summer.
same summer activities with teenage parents?
Yes. So that would enable them to do the summer programming, the home visits, any needs that the teens, they're right there on site for them.
Great. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to be so rude, but could Ms. Ripper repeat part of her answer because of the buzzing up here from the microphones?
So the reason for the change is because of state requirements, we expanded their role from a 10-month position to a 12-month position. So they'll be full-year employees now.
They're going to be doing some of the same activities. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me go to my next one. I want to go to page 21, number 1, the CAS facilitators. How did you get to the number of facilitators that will be at each school?
I believe, Dr. Holly, it's based on the number of identified gifted students at the school.
Now, in the past, we used to have a person or persons that was their full-time job. So now we have teachers that will be doing 44 minutes per day to fulfill the responsibility of a CAS facilitator. They're supposed to write their IEPs, mentor the students, act as a resource for parents, students, and teachers. Do you really think that 44 minutes out of the day is going to actually happen? I'm confused. Is the quality of work still going to be there?
It's certainly our intention that it is, even though the model's different clearly because, as you said, we had a person that was full-time. That person had quite a caseload. So even though there's much less time available, they will be working with a much smaller group of students. So it is our hope that that will balance out. But certainly this is something that we've not done it this way before. And so we'll have to monitor and see, how well this works for this next year. I think it'll be important to know that.
And I'm glad that you said that you're going to monitor it because I was very concerned about some of the high schools that have substantial numbers of students in CAS to make sure that we don't get any kind of repercussions from the state by not having their IEPs done on time. Parents being informed. These are, we don't want to do this with any of the parents that are in special education, and we certainly don't want this to happen to these students as well. I'm looking at Brashear. Are we only looking at the Teaching Institute, or are we looking at Brashear as a whole? Because you have Teaching Institute at Brashear.
It would be Brashear as a whole.
Brashear as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. That was one. Okay. And then I wanted to make a comment also about page 1 of Addendum E. The assistant superintendents, I didn't know that their performance increment is 2,000. The principal's performance increment is what, 500?
I think it's more than 500. I thought it was 2,000. It is.
It's
yeah, it's 2,000.
So I'm confused, and I was a principal. I shouldn't be confused, should I?
I think we paid you your performance increment, Dr. Holly.
I want my money back. So their performance increment is 2,000, but their annual achievement bonus can go up to 15,000. What would constitute the annual achievement bonus? What would actually go into that?
And I can't quote it to you, and I didn't bring it with me, I'm sorry, but it's divided into approximately 8 to 10 different components. One is, it's based right now on PVAS, which of course is a growth model. And so separate reading and math for PVAS by grade is a part of it, and I think we have all tested grades and subjects in there. And then there's another component around the increase in achievement specifically for African American students. So there are two components that are tied strictly to the achievement of African American students.
Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Holly. Mr. Eisler.
I usually like to go last because I like to recognize all of our employees that are in the military and thank them for a job well done.
Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Quick question on clarification. We were just handed a sheet of the additional positions opened and closed. In Addendum C, where are the corresponding positions? I look at page 2 under B, and I see only 4 names there, or 4 positions, and they don't necessarily line up one-on-one with the ones we have before us. 3 of them do, and I'm just questioning where the others are.
So of those 7 position closings, you're correct, 4 of them result in furlough. The other 3 are involved in the bumping activity that is captured in the addendum where the secretarial transfers occur, and 1 is a bump back to the PFT professional unit.
Okay, where then is the technology specialist?
Technology specialist will continue in the process for placement in the PFT bargaining unit and seek a placement there. But that position has closed, and that person will exercise his or her rights in that with the certifications that they have in the reassignment process. So it's not a direct furlough.
Thank you. I think I understand now that those positions are closed, but 3 of the 7 still remain with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
I hesitate to take a vote because Mrs. Shealy has questions. You know what? Can we go on to the financial, and we'll come back, because she specifically said I have questions. Any comments on the financial or the finance report? It's the yellow tab. It's the financial statement dated May 31st, 2012. Mr. Eisler.
Mrs. Azuda, questions are on the key financial indicators, and all the indicators for this particular month are negative, and I'm wondering if there is a explanation for that.
Yes, the negative indicators this month are related to the timing related to our earned income tax collection under the new tax collection process. We believe we'll catch up with the payments we'll receive through the month of July. So we shall see at your legislative meeting in August, we should have a positive effect on all of our collections. And that was expected, and we knew that timing was going to occur.
So, Mr. Carter, let me just stop you there. It is not in terms of the amount of taxes being collected and or assessed. It is the timing as a result of the court issues delaying the payment periods. Is that what you're saying?
Combination of court issues on real estate tax and the timing effect from the change for the tax collection committee process. So
but that's the real estate tax. That's not earned income. So earned income, is there a decrease there too?
Earned income slowed down by almost a quarter because of the new process, yes.
So it is the process that is slowing us down in terms of, and you anticipate that this will all be straightened out by August?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I hope also in August that we have a state budget and you're able to report how that is going to affect us for the next fiscal year.
We've been monitoring closely, and we expect to be able to report, if not by the end of this week, very early next week.
You're very optimistic. I don't think you'll get it by the end of this week, sir. I was just there today. It's not going to happen. I think it'll probably happen over the weekend, but there are obviously some concerns there because they're moving targets. Not great news, but some good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Are there any other questions on the financial statement? All right, we'll go back to the business or the personnel report. Mrs. Shealy.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I actually just wanted to make one comment, and that's a thank you to Ms. Spolar and Dr. Lane for naming the athletic appointments before they actually take their place. That when we name appointments after the fact, it puts us in an awkward position. And by getting them done before they actually start working with the students is a great service to us all. So I just wanted to thank you for that and acknowledge that I know it was a lot of work to get this done by June. Thank you.
And thank you to Mr. Gavlik, too. Okay, Mr. Weiss, can we have a vote, please, on the
So on
report
the
and
personnel report, Mr. Brentley,
No, no.
it only counts as one. Mrs. Khaleesi.
Yes, on the report as a whole, on page 21, number 3, I will abstain.
Mrs. Fink.
Yes.
Dr. Holly.
Yes on the report as a whole. No on Addendum B, page 2, number 2, page 3, number 4, and no on Addendum E, page 1, number 1.
Mr. Eisler.
Yes.
Mr. McCray. Yes. Ms. Shealy.
I need to abstain on item A3 in the main report. And I will vote no on Addendum A, number 1E, Addendum B, D as in door, 2, and yes on the rest of the items in the report.
Mr. Sumter.
Point of order, point of clarification. On the resolution in Addendum E, can that be broken apart, or does that have to be voted on in total?
It's a resolution. I mean, it's not a separate item.
You're saying that it's either all or none?
Well, I mean, it's a resolution. It's not a separate report. These aren't, separate items.
Okay,
Then he has to go back.
okay. Before we leave, I'll be voting yes on the report as a whole. I'll abstain on item 1G, page 31. No on item 1E, page 1, addendum A. No on item C4, page 2, addendum B.
Wait a minute. Let me get these again. This is difficult. What about addendum A? What do you?
No on item 1E, page 1, addendum A.
Okay.
No on item C4, page 2, addendum B.
Okay.
No on item D2, page 2, addendum B.
You want to repeat that again? I'm sorry, on D, on E rather?
D2, page 2, addendum B. No on item D4, page 3, addendum B. And no on addendum E.
Mrs. Zuda?
Before you take my vote, I think you have to go back to Dr. Hawley's vote on the addendum E.
Holly?
Didn't you split it?
There you go. Are you telling me I have to vote in affirmative for all of it or none of it
On which one?
for addendum E?
Well, it's a resolution. So it's, it's not a separate report like you have in other reports in the item.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Since you made that clarification, I'm going to abstain on that,
Addendum E?
yes. Because I don't want to do it to all.
Yes.
I'll change my vote to an abstention on addendum E also.
Mrs. Azuda,
Yes.
it appears the report's been approved. I need to get a new grid, but that's for next month.
All right, well, we got through that quickly.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. That's why we have an engineer on the board.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. There are no new business items in our legislative agenda this evening. Are there any items to be brought before the board at this time that require board approval? Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I got a couple of items. I'd like to move them quickly, but I will go with the wishes of this board if we need to discuss and clarify them. I gave out, well, I actually mentioned at last week's meeting, there would be 4 items that I would bring before this board. And I gave out in the back room the copy of them. I'll read them quickly. This is a resolution for the Board of Public Education to raise the GPA standards for the Pittsburgh Public Schools to a 2.5 for the 2013-14 school year. Be it resolved that we raise the GPA standards for the Pittsburgh Public Schools to 2.5 to align itself with the same qualifications used for the Pittsburgh Promise beginning 2013-2014 school year, using the 2012-2013 school year to truly get students Promise ready. Presently, it is at 2.0. So this is just an item to align it with the Pittsburgh Promise. The second item is...
Let's take one at a time.
Oh, one at a time, fine. We'll be here all night, but I'm prepared.
Well,
It's what they want, it's what they want. Yes.
These are separate items.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So that's the first item.
Questions or comments?
Is second.
You want to make your motion?
Oh, I make a motion that we move forward with this resolution just read to raise the GPA standard to 2.5 to align it with the Pittsburgh Promise to make sure that all kids qualify.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Brentley Hawley, questions on the motion? Mr. Brentley, did it go through the policy committee? Because this is actually, I understand what your intent is, but this is a change in what's actually policy number 119, and this says to raise the GPA standard for the schools, but it really doesn't explain what the standard is for, or what, do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't. The standard presently is 2.0. It came from actually came from a 1.5, believe it or not. And now it went to it is at 2.0. This is nothing more but lining it with the Pittsburgh Promise. When we made it to 1.5, it actually knocked out certain kids from qualifying for the Pittsburgh Promise. We're talking about Promise Ready, we're talking about transparency, and we're talking about allowing the students to get the necessary skills that they need to be marketable once they graduate. So.
And I understand what your intent is. What I'm trying to explain is that standard is the wording is in our policy number 119 that is titled Interscholastic Athletics Extra and Co-Curricular Activities. And there's no reference to this policy in here. So when this stands alone, this resolution alone is just saying, let's change the standard. Mm-hmm. And I understand what you're trying to say, but it doesn't match up with the policy that we have in force.
Okay, what is the policy? What's the policy number?
119.
Okay, let's solve that. This will be in alignment with policy number 119.
Do we have to take it to the policy committee so that they can, if it goes to the policy committee, are they able to insert the 2.5 for Mr. Brentley? Oh, and for myself too, because I want that to happen as well.
Wait, Mr.
I mean,
Rice.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
I think this is one of those that is between the Education Committee and the Policy Committee. I mean, I honestly believe that, and I do think that it deserves a discussion of the whole board at one of those two committees. I mean, the Policy Committee can recommend, but I think that there is a lot to be said to this and to discussed about this one at the Education Committee meeting, because I think that it is a significant change. I understand that it is being delayed for a year, but I think that it'd be important to hear the number of students that potentially could be negatively affected by this, who would not be able to play, who would not be able to participate in extracurricular activities. And I think that's what's important. It's not just sports. It's all the extracurricular activities that we offer as a school district.
I agree with you in that, but I also want to say that it would give an expectation to students, to parents, and to schools that if you want to have programming going on in your school, we've really got to pull together to make sure that our children are at least at a C average. And by doing this, this will make more of our students more eligible for Pittsburgh Promise dollars, and that's, to me, is critical.
I have no disagreement with you on that. I just think that it deserves the discussion of the full board, and I think we need to hear that. Thank you. And I mean, also, it gives parents a chance, and students and anybody else, in terms of public testimony on an issue like this. Thank you.
Mrs. Shealy, you had your hand up. You still want to talk?
I'm not sure. I was going to suggest that, to Dr. Holly's question, I think an appropriate way to have handled it, depending on what I guess Mr. Brentley would choose as his motion, is to make the motion so that it modifies that policy. And I think if the board would vote to modify a policy, that would stand, whether it went through committee or not.
The question becomes, are you suggesting we modify the policy tonight? No, you're just saying that would be the way to do it. Okay. Mr. Brentley, how do you choose to go with this at this point?
I'm going to move on the side of the children of the district and the parents who want us to set the bar high. I am not going for all this mumble jumble that we often hear. To send a clear message to these students. First of all, we have to really raise some concerns about lowering to a 1.5. How insulting to do that to children in the Pittsburgh Public Schools, knowing what group you are targeting. Now to try to right or wrong, all of a sudden there are all these procedures. This is what's before you. You just have to vote accordingly. But it's important that we begin to kind of, sort of speak the same language. You can't talk about all this language about promise this and dream big and promise ready when just to qualify for the promise is a 2.5, but you're going to have these kids at a 2.0, and then you're going to say, before we move it forward, we have to have a discussion and bring it before the policy. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. And some of these my board members, I'm going to ask that you try to separate it. Separate the item from me. You're trained to often vote no, whatever I do or say, and I'm cool with that. I have broad shoulders. But it's about these students. We're increasing class sizes. We've closed schools. We've put a lot on the plate come October, August, or September for these students. And let's just simply do the right thing. This is the right way to go. Let's do it now. We have a whole year to market. We have a whole year to get them promise ready, and we can begin to advocate for that. It is the right thing to do. So vote accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Dr. Holly, do you still want to second it?
I want to ask Mr. Brentley a question so I can get clarification. Mr. Brentley, on your motion, was it for 2013, 14?
That's correct. Not this school year.
Not this school year?
Yes.
Well, with it not being this school year, we have time then to really do this appropriately. and just listen to, my concerns about this. If we wait until maybe December or January, it'll give us time to bring this forth to the Education Committee. It'll give time for parents and students even, or teachers or principals, to make comment about how we can actually get this done, or if we can get it done at all. I'm saying I think that it's something that's doable, but I really want to do it and do it right by having parents have the opportunity to make comment, and also making sure that we get it through the policy committee and on the education committee agenda. Then that way, nobody can say that it wasn't done properly when we vote for it the next time.
I don't know your question.
Please.
What are you asking?
I'm asking to wait for this vote and have us go through that process so that we have it done correctly.
Well, Doctor, I appreciate what you share, but that's not the right way to do that. Doctor, this is bigger than just this policy here.
I know it is.
Hear me out.
Okay.
Hear me out. What you're faced with is what's been happening on this board for the last 7 or 8 years. It is the person presenting, not necessarily the item. We have to break that. We have to break that. Case in point, just a month and a half ago, Ms. Shealy presented an item, never came for discussion, never was on an agenda. I received it 2 hours before I came to this board, and it was detailed in terms of how we're directing this superintendent to enter into a contract with the teachers union, and in so many words, some refer to it as breaking the union. Controversial. This board voted, never had a discussion. That one item caused shockwaves in this city, strained the relationship with our unions and other employees, and not one person had the nerve to say, we should take this to the policy, or we should have a discussion. Not one person, okay? So it is a challenge for this board to do what's right by children and not necessarily hiding behind, she's okay, she votes with us, she laughs at our jokes, she supports our issues, we'll support whatever it's put on the table. It's beyond that. Here is an item before you. This is the right thing to do. More than enough time to talk about time to get these kids ready. Waiting for January, we don't know what could happen. Yeah, you're going to have a new leadership in December, so we don't know what could happen. Where's the harm and where's the foul in passing this today? And no one can address that. No, zero cost.
I think that the issue, and I'm just listening to everyone's conversation, I think the issue in and of itself is that we want to bring forth a motion that we can have a conversation around first. And for this, it's not that I disagree with you. I am very much in agreement that it should be raised to a 2.5. However, I still also would like to hear some of the benefits from the parents, to see if there's going to be any outcry from the parents about us raising this to a 2.5, because it was an outcry about you lowering it to a 1.5. I mean, even I was totally disgusted over that. But we need to, I want to do this in a way that it's not going to come back to harm the students. And I think that if we don't do this in a correct manner, that it will harm the students. I know you feel very passionate about this, and I am very passionate about it as well. I just want to make sure that we do this correctly. And we have a whole year to actually work on it, since it's not going to go into effect until 2013-14.
Well, listen,
So
Doctor,
let's work on it.
I appreciate it. It is here. I want to vote on it now, but remember, it's fascinating to see. I didn't hear those concerns when Mr. Eisler put the 1.5 on the table, knowing what it was doing to black kids. No, I didn't hear that, okay? And then the even discussion, we might even go lower than that. And okay? So some of these kids don't have that luxury. Once again, point out the harm. Someone point out the harm of passing this now. And we can do all the things you said. There's nothing prohibiting parents and teachers and or other different organizations from registering their comments and their concerns about this item. We have a whole year before it goes into effect, so there's time to tweak it. But we as directors have to send the message. And you know something, and it should be something that I shouldn't be standing alone on.
I don't think you're standing alone. I think that...
Shouldn't be a long, drawn-out conversation.
I mean, Regina really wants to make sure that students are getting what they need, and we have high expectations for all of our children in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. But if there's a way to do this to make sure that it's done appropriately and it's not going to come back where it has to be taken off, I just really want to make sure that it's done correctly.
I understand.
That's
I understand that. Well, listen, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No,
Thank you,
never apologize. Thank you. I respect and honor all of your experience as an educator. But this is to my colleagues here and breaking this political double standard that they have on this board when something is introduced by one person. We go on for hours and hours. If I handed this off to a white board member, it would pass. And one or two African Americans, it would pass. It would pass. I said it would.
Okay, so Dr. Hawley.
The item is here, just voted accordingly, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Dr. Hawley, Dr. Hawley, do you still have your, like this is?
I'm sorry, just a point of order. Dr. Hawley, if you pull your second and then are not on the prevailing side of this motion, you will not be able to bring it back. If you do not pull your second and are not on the prevailing side, you will not be able to bring it back. Ever. Not you personally. Your vote is tied to you. So I would just like to, remind people that, and I think it was Bill Cosby who said that you should turn the mirror around when you decide to call people's names and talk about them as though they do not care about children. I think the concerns that people, or at least Dr. Hawley is expressing, is we need to understand how this affects the children of this district. Because there are a lot of kids in the 2.0 to 2.5 range who are involved in activities who would not be able to be involved in activities by this motion. And while those kids are not eligible for the promise at this point, they have or could potentially have futures as musicians or writers or whatever, because they're doing yearbook, they're doing band, they're doing newspaper. And we need to understand the impact of that without voting. To my motion I made a few months ago, I did make calls and have discussions with the majority of board members, those who would return my calls or answer my emails. I had discussions with. Thank you.
Just for clarification before, I was trying to write Mr. Weiss a note. Would Dr. Hawley lose her right to bring it back up by seconding a motion or by how she would vote on the motion?
It's the vote. It's the vote.
It's the vote.
So the way it works was essentially a reconsideration, is what it is. The only person, the board members that can move for reconsideration are those that would vote against the motion. So if somebody voted no and would want to bring it up again, they could make that motion to reconsider. Those who would vote yes could not. So it's the vote and not the movement or the seconder.
Mr. Weiss, just for clarity, it's the prevailing side. It doesn't matter if it's yes or no.
Well, it's the prevailing side, yes, I'm sorry, you're right.
I really do not want, I really want to be able to bring this back to the board because I think that it's extremely important for us to have high expectations for our students. I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Brentley's passionate plea at this time. However, I do not want to not be able to bring this back again, and I am going to bring this back again because I do want that policy to be changed. And this board will have to make a choice on whether or not they want to have high expectations for all of the students in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. But at this time, I'll rescind my second.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, I'm sorry. Would you like to go on with your next motion?
I just want to say, you know, Doctor, it's unfortunate that they've allowed this thing to be reduced to you, who is the educator, and myself, and I will never, ever lose any disrespect towards you, but remember, my actions here are directed to 6 and 7 years of what's been happening around this table, and I am sorry that they've allowed you to get caught up into this. You stood many times and boldly fought for kids over there against the odds in Homewood. And so to be able to now roll this up and to put this in your lap, you know, if it was so important, why haven't Mr. Eisler responded to the 1.5? Why? But we roll it up and put it in the lap of the educator. So there is no love lost to you. We have to do something with these kids. You know they are failing, and the messages that we're sending are very, very, very bad. I have the floor. I have the floor. Well, get up and leave if you're not interested. We offered to move it forward, but you didn't want to. We'll move on to the next item. The next item is a resolution of the Board of Public Education of the school district to remove Pittsburgh from all of its name. One of the most ridiculous things that we've had. Doctor, please to know, not Mr. Camarda, can you tell me the name of the contractor, consultant, and what was the final amount that we paid to have this item in this district?
I'm not aware of a consultant that made the recommendation.
I'm sorry?
I'm not aware that a consultant made the recommendation.
So it was. I mean, do you remember what the cost was?
Mr. Brentley, I'm not aware that a consultant made the recommendation.
Okay. Do you know who made the recommendation?
My recall is that it was part of the recommendations under our previous superintendent.
Okay. And that was a consultant. Dr. Lane, I would like for you, if you could, to provide for me the name of the company and the individual who even attended the Education Committee meeting. And I would like the total amount that was paid to this consultant for the research and study of, they called it branding, changing the branding, and eventually ended up with putting Pittsburgh in front of all the schools. Are you aware of that company? You were here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brentley, I don't have that on the top of my head, no.
Okay. I'll share the information with you. The folks who are watching will probably be able to bring it up. Okay. The point is that the point, and I'm making a motion. The point is, it is something that is unnecessary, and it is something we should just simply remove from the district. That is the motion that is before you.
So you're making a motion to adopt this resolution?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second to this motion? I'm sorry, it dies for lack of a second.
I'm used to that. Thank you. The final one is a resolution of the Board of Public Education, Pittsburgh Public Schools, to reinstate these stenographer services at the Education Committee meeting. As you know, just last week, there were 3 references to the Education Committee meeting that we had here, and we do not provide those services. Those services should be available. Copy of of those records should be on hand for the public at any time the public want to come in and to view it, to see what was discussed at the Education Committee meeting. It is at a fraction of the cost. We do it for the business affairs, and we do it for our agenda review. So this is the motion that's before you here.
Business does not have an agenda.
Okay, well, I'm sorry,
Thank you.
the
Just wanna make sure
legislative.
it's clarified.
That's right. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Okay. That's the item before us.
Okay, Mr. Brentley's making a motion to accept his third resolution. Is there a second to it?
I second the motion for that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Just for clarification, before I'll let Mrs. Clazy make her comments or questions, there is they are audio taped, so there is a record available for reference. Just for clarification, not for argument purposes, just clarification. Mrs. Clazy? Oh, I'm sorry. Does anyone else have anything to say? All right.
But keep in mind, audio is not an official record, okay? It's not an official.
Okay.
But it is an audio recording of the meetings, not official.
Mr. Eisler.
And I just have a point of clarification. Mr. Weiss, if we have recording for that meeting?
Well, it's a recording maintained by the board, so in that sense, it is a recording of the meeting. I mean, the only official item are minutes of your legislative meeting. Everything else is just transcripts and recordings, but the only thing that's official and has any legal weight are the minutes of a voting meeting.
The education, but if you had someone at the Education Committee meeting and they were doing a transcript of that, parents would, or community members would have the opportunity to pick that up, read it, make notations, or what have you. And they're not able to do that on an audio tape. That's just my, so that's my concern there.
We do have copies of agenda reviews. Does anyone know if anyone ever asks to look at them? Because those are what lead into this. Okay.
The point is the availability of information. Just the availability of the information. We're discussing, we're sharing, we're making recommendations at the Education Committee meetings. We're referencing things, we're giving background information on things that will eventually go into a policy that could eventually close a school, lay off individuals, or whatever. The public should simply be able to have access to it, so it's nothing more than that. Audio is helpful, but it is not official. You cannot definitely find out who said that. You have to listen. Official transcripts is there. It's there. You can make a hard copy. You can see where the comments made. So I mean, there's no comparison.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brentley. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Scalise?
No.
Mrs. Fink has left. Dr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
No.
Mr. McCray?
No.
Ms. Shealy is not here. If she returns, she can vote. Mr. Sumter?
No.
Mrs. Azuda?
No.
Okay, the vote is 2 to 5, so the motion fails, and Ms. Shealy's vote would not change that result.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I have my final resolution, and I have one other comment after this. This is the resolution for the Board of Public Education for Pittsburgh opposing the sale of alcohol at Kennywood Park. To those of you who've watched the news and heard about it, it is something that Kennywood Park is deciding to do. Senator Furlow has been an outspoken opponent of it, but making some recommendations to it. Whereas Kennywood Park has been hosting an annual school outing for over the last 50 years, whereas the district of Pittsburgh sends thousands of children to Kennywood Park on outings annually, whereas Kennywood Park has recently announced its intentions to sell alcohol beverages at the park, and whereas the Board of Education is opposed to the sale of alcohol at Kennywood Park and believes that alcohol sales will threaten the safety of students and their families at future school outings, whereas State Senator Jim Furlow has opposed the sale of alcohol at Kennywood Park and proposed restrictions in the event alcohol is made available, including prohibition of alcohol sales during the school outing season, whereas the Board of Education wishes to set forth its opposition to proposed alcohol sales by official resolution. Now, therefore, be resolved that the sale of alcohol beverages at Kennywood Park is hereby opposed by the Board of Education at the District of Pittsburgh. And number 2, if Kennywood Park makes alcohol sales available despite the opposition, the Board of Public Education supports the restrictions proposed by Senator Furlow, including strict prohibition of alcohol sales during school outing seasons.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Are you making,
that is the motion.
moving to that resolution? Yes. Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I second that.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Mrs. Khaleesi.
I'm very uncomfortable with this resolution, and I do want to also state that I did not receive these until Mr. Sumter was kind enough to make sure that I got these resolutions this evening. From what I understood, we were supposed to get them this weekend. But as a business owner, and as many times as I've heard Mr. Brentley comment on small business and especially minority women-owned businesses, I find this somewhat disturbing. This is a private business that doesn't even operate in the city of Pittsburgh. I don't think we have the right, nor should we assume we can have the right to tell them what they can and cannot sell. This country is built on the freedom of businesses. And to tell them if they can or cannot serve alcohol, I just don't think it's right. They sell alcohol at Disney World. In specific places, they sell it. They sell alcohol in many, many amusement parks. They have it under control, they know what they have to do, and they do what they have to do. This is their decision, this is their choice, and this is not any of our business. You do not wish to go there and spend your money, then you don't. But I don't think you have the right, and I most certainly don't think this board has the right to even voice its opinion on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. Mr. Eisler.
Mr. Weiss, I cannot vote on this. Do I abstain or not vote at all?
Well, if you're not going to vote, yes or no, you abstain.
Okay, I mean, there's very clear reasons of why I cannot do this, which I can go into with you. Thank you.
Dr. Hawley.
My main concern is that, and Senator Furlow is absolutely correct, and so is my colleague, Mr. Brentley. Our children, they come into our school to sell tickets. So we are intricately involved with Kennywood. I mean, they make a lot of money off of the school district's students and throughout the community. And it may or may not pass. However, selling alcohol where there are a lot of children and parents send their children to the park sometimes by themselves. They're there. I'm just really concerned that there are enough wrong activities going on at Kennywood that they have to deal with. They do not need to deal with people who are going to be intoxicated, especially around small children. So even though it may or may not pass here, I really just think that it was important to voice our opinion that alcohol really is not the best thing to serve at a park that is visited by our students.
Mr. Sumter.
Minor comment, we just accepted pirate tickets for Summer Dreamers, PNC Park. But I understand the intent of this resolution, but I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Any other questions? Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
No.
Mrs. Fink is not here. Dr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. Eisler,
Abstain.
Mr. McCray,
No.
Ms. Shealy, this is the Kennywood resolution. Are you prepared to vote?
No.
You say you're not voting? May I record you as abstaining?
That was not the sentence I was going to use. Mr. Weiss, I take seriously that the reason for abstaining is for conflict of interest, and I have no conflict in this matter.
Well, you could abstain for lack of information or, I mean,
Oh, so can I abstain for lack of information? Thank you. That's what I'll do.
Mr. Sumter,
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda.
No.
The motion, it's a tie. It's 3-3 with 2 abstentions, so the motion fails.
Mr. Brentley?
Yes, this doesn't require a vote. This,
Yeah, but neither side prevailed. It's
no, I'm
3-3.
talking to her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on things that require board
I'm
action.
sorry, I
That's okay.
misunderstood.
People are used to being beaten up on me. It's okay.
I've been beat up on
It's
you.
all
I just
right.
misunderstood.
I'm used to it.
We're on
It's-
items that require board action.
Okay, then I'll wait.
Anyone? Mr. Sumter?
Some board members received a letter from the Hill District Education Council, and it was, basically it says that the Hill District Education Council vehemently objects to the Success Schools model and demands that the legislative vote taken on May 23rd, 2012 be rescinded as it applies to Success Schools at University Prep at Malines for the following reasons. The Hill District community has not been informed of Success Schools model, intentions, plan, or scope of services. The Success Schools model as a whole school model with 700 plus students has never been implemented anywhere and therefore is purely experimental. There is no evidence of an academic component nor evidence of academic achievement according to the Pennsylvania Department of Education standards or assessments. I read that part of the letter to inform the board of the position of the Hill District Education Council. However, it is incumbent upon a member of the prevailing side of that vote from May 23rd to bring back a rescission on that vote. This is just protocol that I'm mentioning for clarification purposes, so nobody will say that they didn't know of what they could or could not do. So I put that out there for information for any board member if they want to take action.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up for board action? All right, for information, Mr. Brentley.
There was a recent report from NPR concerning the issues around Shenley High School, which is the previous administration was able to sell to this board, house on fire, shut it down, asbestos is bad. Well, new information has been released that it did not have the levels of asbestos that were considered to be dangerous. That is a big, big, big issue here. We closed the school based on bad information that we received from a variety of consultants and different companies. And so I am sharing this information. By the way, it was an NPR article where the information was recently mentioned. And there are quite a few things that need to be talked about. But first of all, Dr. Lane, I want to ask you to provide and make available in the board office all of the reports that were submitted around the Shenley High School's so-called asbestos problems. I know of at least 2, maybe 3 companies. I would like to see any and all reports that the staff have, because we understand the staff had to acknowledge the reports, and I don't know if there was a response to them as well, but any and all reports that the staff had to exchange on. Secondly, I'd like to know when did our staff find out about this information, or if you even know about this recent information? And then finally, I think that we should freeze everything in and around any actions concerning the Shenley High School. I believe that this, well, I'm not going to, I believe there are a lot of questions. Someone was not sharing information, and it caused this district to spend millions of dollars, misleading information, borderline lying. We made all kinds of adjustments, shut Shenley down, sent those kids to Reisenstein, put in $10 million in Reisenstein. Then we closed Reisenstein down. Now we ship them to Peabody. We're spending, you know, this is, it's terrible. So I'm asking, Doc, that you provide that. Eventually, we are trying, and I'm asking this board to keep in mind, because at some point when we can identify an independent agency or organization, I believe at the very least it requires a full investigation as to what happened, who knew what, and then how can we rectify it. We shipped and moved those kids around on some bad information. So I am asking, and at a certain point, we're going to have to identify some dollars to get a company to come in, and so I don't know if it's going to come from the board's budget or the administration, but it needs to move very quickly. I will be working with the community as well as the Shenley alumni and different organizations, and if we're unable to get an independent group or different or someone to look into it, then we will set up a people's court to identify what happened and what caused this district to spend this kind of money. So, Dr. Lane, if you can provide that, and if we can have maybe 2 sets of copies, one for the board, but one available to the viewing public who would like to come in and to go through those documentations and to begin to identify what happened. Secondly, I'm asking that we simply hold all actions on whatever plans that we have for handing off or selling or whatever we're planning on doing with the Shenley High School building. Thank you.
Mrs. Khaleesi? I'm good, thank you. Dr. Hawley? Mr. Eisler?
Thanks, Mrs. Azuda. Not too long ago, the Pittsburgh Promise celebrated the graduation of the first cohort of students graduating from 4-year colleges and universities. And I take a little bit of Mr. Sumter's thunder by going ahead of him, but I think I have to. He and Sarah Sumter have been major supporters of the Pittsburgh Promise from day one. What was amazing to me about the event was, in all due respect to Dr. Lane, who was part of the adult presentation, were the students. I've received emails from some of them. It is overwhelming what these students have accomplished, what they will accomplish, and what their contributions will be to the greater society. Again, I salute everybody who has contributed to the Promise. As Mr. Sumter says at every single meeting when he has a microphone, do not forget about the Pittsburgh Promise. If you could sit with these graduates, as a number of corporations did for 2 or 3 days, you would know how incredible these students are going to be as your workers and as your citizens. I cannot say enough about the messages of hope that those students gave to everybody that was in that audience that night, and I know that everybody who walked out of the door after that event felt that this was money well spent and a job well done by a lot of people in this, not just this city, but this larger region, who has been and will continue to support this incredible program. So again, I want to congratulate the graduates. There was a young lady who spoke at the Alderdice graduation who was, I mean, what these young students are majoring in college and graduating in, I can't even repeat. because they're such significant fields. They're not in any way insignificant work and study and scholars. But it is just, I think, a tremendous program. And I'm sorry, Mr. Sumter, I did warn you of this ahead of time. But again, I thank you for your incredible support, and Sarah's also. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Mr. McCray.
My son is in that cohort of students. We really don't want to turn him loose in the public. Anyway, next Wednesday is July 4th, and I'm going to give you my fireworks speech again, as I do every year, because safety is my middle name. Of course, yeah, I just changed it last week.
Okay. Skip safety McCray.
But it's nothing to laugh at. People are injured every year significantly, and in the state of Pennsylvania, anything that explodes or goes up in the air is illegal, and the city task force will be out there to get you this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Mr. Sumter.
It's interesting, just yesterday, a fireworks vendor caught fire in West Virginia, and it went everywhere. They were saying they weren't selling illegal fireworks, but because of what you could see and what happened, they knew they were, so they got cited for that. Just as we're working on putting an effective teacher before every child, put effective teacher in each classroom, there is a rule of, not a rule, there is a body of study that talks about how boards can be effective school boards. And an effective school board concentrates its time on education issues, policy issues, major concerns for the district. And the way a board gets to that determines its degree of effectiveness. The concerns that I read earlier from the letter from the Hill District Education Council, I would hope that in some way we could address those concerns regarding meeting with the community, informing them of the model, the intentions, the plan, the scope of services, addressing the other concerns that were mentioned too, because that vote was not rescinded, to do everything we can to make sure that that program is carried out appropriately, and if not, know when to throw the flag up to get it out of there if need be. And as always, the kids that were on stage, there were 5. The picture that people might not record or may record is that out of the 5, 3 were African Americans, of the ones they chose to present. So I think it gave a good picture of the district, which we know the majority of students are African American, and didn't leave that feeling that, oh, we got excluded, oh, we're not included, oh, you know, things of that nature. So it was righteous in that manner. 3,200 students have come through the Pittsburgh Promise already, have received scholarships based on the existing standards that exist. And I'm sure that as it catches on more and more, that as they see students successfully going to college and graduating, that more and more of our students, and that's our hope, is that all students will become Promise ready, at least whether they go to school or not within the state. And as always, if you want to invest in our future, give to the Pittsburgh Promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Ms. Shealy.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. During the course of the evening, I think I heard, well, I'm sure I heard, at least 3 items that will be discussed in more detail through committee. And just to reiterate those, it's the GPA policy, policy 119, the gifted pilot and the results of that, and the Success Schools model, and how that will be implemented at the schools for which it was chosen. It's going to take some time to schedule those because we are pretty much booked through August. but we will work to get those on the agenda in education or committee meeting.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Lane. I'm sorry, Mrs. Khaleesi made a suggestion that whatever can be done via the board update, please do so. But I do still think for at least those 3 items, we need to have a full conversation.
Right.
Dr. Lane?
Yes, we certainly can do it in whatever manner the board chooses. I did want to let Mr. Sumter know, though, there is a meeting scheduled with representatives of Hill District Education Council already.
Thank you, Mrs. Zazuda.
Thank you. I just want to say that there is no power in any individual board member. The legal power of the board is by the vote of the 9 of us and what happens at this meeting. So I want to thank everyone for hanging in this long, because ultimately what happens at the legislative meeting is what the board means. It doesn't mean what Sherry leaves and says or what anyone else leaves and says as an individual. We are a unit of one voice. And so I thank everyone for hanging in, and motion to adjourn. Eisler Khaleesi, meeting adjourned. All right, we'll give a minute and we'll switch over to the intermediate unit.
Right.
Are you serious? God love you.
Ready. Ready.
All right. I'd like to call the June 25th, 2012 meeting of the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit to order. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Brentley? Here. Mrs. Khaleesi?
Here.
Mrs. Fink is left. Dr. Hawley?
Here.
Mr. Eisler?
Here, present.
Mr. McCray?
Here.
Shealy?
Here.
Sumter?
Present.
Mrs. Azuda?
Here.
8 members present.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Will board members please turn to the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? Motion to accept the minutes? So moved. Second. Shealy, Sumter, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes approved. Committee on Education. Are there any questions? Comments? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Rice, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Yes. Dr. Hawley? Yes. Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Let's move to the committee report on business that is before us. Are there any questions or comments on the budget that were not addressed at agenda review? Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Yes. Dr. Hawley? Yes. Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Report's approved.
The committee report on personnel is before us. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Yes. Dr. Hawley? Yes. Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Are there any other items to be brought before the board at this time?
Move to adjourn.
Sumter, Shealy, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Bear, for staying with us so long.